The galaxy had always been a vast, silent expanse, a place where stars burned cold and planets drifted lonely in the void. But one day, a desperate cry shattered that silence. The Asilians, a fragile, luminous species from the planet Velora, sent out a broadcast that trembled with fear and hopelessness. Their world, once a thriving jewel of green oceans and floating cities, had fallen under the shadow of the Trithax. The Trithax were merciless conquerors, a species built for war and destruction, who consumed entire civilizations as casually as one might eat a meal. For months, the Asilians had sent their pleas to neighboring star systems. Every message carried the same words: "Help us, or we will be destroyed." And yet, none answered. Powerful empires, proud fleets, and wealthy merchants all turned away. The Trithax were feared beyond measure. Entire fleets had vanished when they crossed paths with the alien monsters. To aid Velora seemed certain death. But the humans listened. From the small blue planet called Earth, a fleet of vessels picked up the Asilian signal. Humans were not an empire of grand fleets or elegant technology. In the eyes of most galactic species, they were primitive, unpredictable, and weak. But humans had something the galaxy often underestimated: survival. From the harsh deserts of Mars to the frozen plains of Europa, humans had endured worlds that would have killed most species outright. They had thrived in conditions designed to break the body and spirit. Commander Elise Kor stood on the bridge of the human battlecruiser Iron Resolve, her eyes scanning the flickering holographic projection of Velora. The Asilian cities were barely visible now, their luminous towers shattered, smoke rising in ribbons that burned against the violet sky. The Trithax fleet surrounded the planet like a predator encircling its prey. Kor's jaw tightened and her fingers curled around the rail of the bridge. "We go," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "We don't wait for permission. We don't wait for anyone else. The Asilians called for help and we answer." Her crew, hardened by years of survival on harsh worlds, felt the familiar surge of determination. They knew the Trithax were dangerous, stronger than any enemy they had faced. Entire human fleets had been warned away from confrontations like this. And yet there was no hesitation. Humans did not pause when the helpless were threatened. Humans did not run when the odds were impossible. They fought. They survived. They protected. In the Asilian broadcast, fear was palpable. Leaders with translucent skin and trembling forms stared at the empty darkness, praying that someone, anyone, would come. The Asilians were not warriors. Their technology was fragile, designed for science and exploration, not for war. Their people had no weapons capable of piercing Trithax armor. They had hope, and hope alone. And yet, even that was fading. Across light years, the human fleet jumped through the void, engines screaming and lights cutting through the black like blades. Fighters streaked forward, small but lethal, weaving through asteroid fields with precise choreography. Dreadnoughts, bristling with weaponry, moved like unstoppable walls of iron. Every human aboard knew the risk. Every human knew they could die in the next second, swallowed by Trithax fire, but that fear did not deter them. It sharpened them. Kor's second-in-command, Lieutenant Maranjao, approached her quietly. "Commander, the Asilians..." She paused, her voice tight. "They've lost so many. They're barely holding on." "I've never seen a species so terrified." Kor nodded, her gaze fixed on the holographic display. "Good," she said softly, almost to herself. "They need to see hope, and we're going to give it to them, even if it costs us everything." As the fleet neared Velora, the devastation became clearer. Smoke and fire covered the planet's surface, great craters marking where Trithax weapons had struck. Floating cities had collapsed into oceans of molten liquid, and small clusters of survivors moved like shadows among the ruins. The Asilians had no shields, no fortresses capable of withstanding another attack. And yet they were alive. That alone made the humans' mission urgent. Kor stood at the observation deck, looking at the pale blue Asilian forms scuttling through ruins. She felt a tightness in her chest, a mix of sorrow and rage. They didn't ask for vengeance. she whispered. They asked for help, and that's exactly what we're going to give them. The first light years of approach passed in tense silence. The human fleet moved as one, a force of survival, ingenuity, and fury. On board, crews checked weapons, ran systems, and prepared for the inevitable confrontation. Humans had fought wars on worlds where the air could kill, the ground could swallow, and predators could tear a person apart in minutes. They had trained, bled, and survived every impossible scenario. The galaxy had no idea what it was about to face, and somewhere in the void, the Trithax fleet stirred. Massive, jagged vessels hummed with energy. Alien commanders whispered commands to their crews, confident that humans would flee, that they would crumble. But humans were not like other species. Humans did not flee. Humans did not beg. Humans survived. Humans hunted. And the galaxy's whispers of the Deathworlders, the humans forged in worlds meant to kill them, were about to become real. The iron resolve surged forward. Kor's voice cut across the fleet. Today we fight not for glory. We fight for life itself. We fight for the helpless. We fight for the galaxy that refuses to act. Let them see what humanity can do. Let them learn fear. And let the Asilians live. For the first time in months, the Asilians dared to hope. Across the darkness of space, a light was coming for them. A light born not of technology, nor of power, but of relentless courage. The Deathworlders were coming. The human fleet emerged from the jump gate, and the sight of Velora took even the most seasoned soldier's breath away. Smoke curled into the violet sky, twisted metal floated in toxic oceans, and the shattered remains of once luminous cities glimmered faintly, like dying stars. The Trithax cruisers loomed over the planet, massive and jagged, their weapons glowing ominously as they scanned for prey. Every human aboard the Iron Resolve knew the danger. One misstep could mean total annihilation. Commander Elise Kor stood on the bridge, her eyes sharp and unyielding as she studied the enemy. They think they've trapped us, she said, her voice steady but carrying the weight of conviction. They've forgotten who they're dealing with. Humans don't run, humans don't beg, humans fight, and today, we show them why. The crew prepared for battle. Fighters streaked forward, darting between debris fields and shattered satellites with precision honed by years of survival on Deathworlds. Each pilot carried memories of ice storms that could freeze a body in seconds, acid rain that ate through armor, and dust storms that stripped flesh from bone. And now, those same instincts guided them through the deadly void of Vailora's orbit. Below them, Asilian survivors clung to life. Their translucent bodies shimmered with fear, and their eyes, wide and uncomprehending, followed the humans' approach. They had never seen warriors like this. Humans were raw, unyielding, and unpredictable. They moved with a kind of terrifying grace, striking from angles that seemed impossible, surviving attacks that would have destroyed any other species. The Trithax had expected a fleeing prey. Instead, they found hunters. Massive warships thundered across the void, firing plasma bolts and kinetic slugs with relentless precision. Smaller cruisers darted through debris, striking at alien gun ports and vanishing before counterfire could find them. Humans attacked like lightning, fast, brutal, and impossible to anticipate. Lieutenant Marin Zhao, Kor's second in command, studied the enemy formation. They've never faced humans like this, she said quietly. The way we move. It's not normal. Even the legends underestimated us. Kor's eyes narrowed. Good. Let them underestimate us. That will be their downfall. Today we are not just fighting for Velora. We're showing the galaxy what humans are capable of. Every life we save, every ship we destroy, every moment we survive, they will remember it. The first clash came swiftly. A Trithax destroyer opened fire, sending torrents of energy bolts toward the human fleet. Fighters twisted through the beams, dodging impossible angles, and responded with volleys that tore through the destroyer's shields. Explosions blossomed across its hull, and within minutes it spiraled into a ball of fire. The Asilians gasped. Never before had they witnessed a species strike with such ruthless efficiency. Their fear began to mingle with awe. Perhaps there was hope. Perhaps salvation had arrived in a form they could not fully comprehend. Meanwhile, on the surface, human Marines dropped from orbital platforms into the toxic jungles and ruined cities. Each squad moved with lethal precision, rescuing trapped Assylian families from collapsing structures and hazardous terrain. Sergeant Rin led his team through a collapsing dome, his voice steady as he guided frightened Assylian children through smoke and fire. "Stay close. We're here. We don't leave anyone behind." The Trithax were ruthless. They did not hesitate, firing indiscriminately at the fleeing civilians. But humans were relentless. Using knowledge gained from surviving Deathworlds, they adapted quickly. Makeshift shields, improvised weaponry, and extreme tactics turned the tide on the ground. Where the Assylians would have perished, humans carved paths of survival. Every rescued life became a symbol of defiance. Every strike against the Trithax a declaration. The weak would not be prey under humanity's watch. Back in orbit, the battle escalated. The Trithax flagship, Bloodmaw, unleashed its energy cannons in a fury, tearing through asteroids and debris. Entire human squadrons vanished in flashes of light. But human resilience shone brightest in these moments. Pilots adapted mid-flight, rerouting power to shields, dodging impossible attacks and striking the enemy in unexpected ways. A damaged fighter would explode one moment, only to see its squadmate emerge from the debris field, attacking with precision born from desperation and training. The Trithax were confused. No species had ever fought like this. No one had ever refused to break even when death stared them in the face. And every human life lost was met with double retaliation. Every fallen soldier inspired 10 acts of vengeance. Kor's voice rang through the fleet. "Push forward. Protect the Assylians. Every life matters. Strike fear into them, not just for ourselves, but for all who cannot fight." The tide of battle began to turn. Trithax cruisers that had once ruled Velora's orbit were now scattered. Their formations broken, smaller ships retreated, unable to face the relentless human strikes. Each explosion of a Trithax vessel sent waves of hope through the Assylian survivors, their fear slowly being replaced by something unfamiliar. Courage. On the bridge of the Iron Resolve, Kor allowed herself a small, grim smile. "They thought they were hunting prey," she said softly. "But prey fights back. Prey survives. Prey can become the predator." The humans had arrived not as saviors who bargained or negotiated. They had arrived as protectors who acted, who survived, who struck with terrifying precision. In the void, the galaxy began to whisper a name with reverence and fear: Deathworlders. Even the Trithax could feel the shift. They had never faced a species that thrived in impossible conditions, that turned fear into a weapon, and survival into an art form. They would soon learn that humans were not prey. Humans were hunters. Humans were relentless. And Velora, fragile and trembling under the shadow of annihilation, dared to hope once more. The first day of battle was over. The humans had survived. They had struck fear into the invaders, and they were only getting started. The fires of Velora burned like the wounds of a dying world. Smoke spiraled into the sky and ash rained down over shattered cities. But the humans did not hesitate. They had come to protect, to survive, and to punish those who preyed on the weak. Commander Elise Kor stood on the bridge of the Iron Resolve, watching the battlefield unfold beneath her. The Trithax were relentless, their ships jagged and monstrous, bristling with weapons that could destroy entire cities. Yet, for every strike they made, the humans responded with brutal precision. Fighter squadrons darted like shadows through the void, striking at gun ports and shield generators. Even when a vessel exploded, the crew adapted instantly, reassigning weapons, rerouting power, and continuing the fight. Humans did not panic. Panic was for the weak. Humans were forged on worlds designed to kill them, trained to turn fear into fuel, pain into strategy. On Valora's surface, squads of human Marines moved through the toxic jungles and ruined domes, rescuing trapped Assylian families. Each step was dangerous. Collapsing buildings, corrosive fogs, and alien ambushes threatened to end their mission at every turn. Yet the humans pressed on. Sergeant Rin led his team through the shattered streets, carrying children, guiding civilians and neutralizing Trithax ambushes with calculated efficiency. "No one gets left behind," he barked. "Not here. Not today." The Trithax were taken aback. They were used to easy victories, to prey that ran or surrendered. But humans were different. Every life they saved fueled their fight. Every strike they executed made them stronger. The aliens had never faced a species that turned desperation into a weapon, survival into an art, and courage into an unstoppable force. Commander Kor's voice echoed through the fleet. "Push forward. We are the shield of the helpless. Every shot we fire protects someone who cannot fight. Every life we save is a life we honor." The Trithax flagship Bloodmaw unleashed a torrent of energy across the battlefield. Explosions erupted among human squadrons. Ships burned, debris scattered through orbit, and for a moment it seemed that even humans could falter. But the fleet adapted instantly. Pilots maneuvered through the devastation, striking from angles the Trithax could not anticipate. Weapons were recalibrated mid-battle, shields reinforced, and small destroyers pressed forward to protect the most vulnerable. On the ground, humans were equally relentless. Toxic rivers ran through the ruined cities, and acid rains fell in relentless sheets. The Assylians struggled to survive in the environment, their fragile bodies ill-equipped for the harshness. Humans carried them through the dangers, shielding them from the falling debris and alien patrols. Their every action was precise, deliberate, and merciless toward the enemy. Sergeant Ryn paused to catch his breath, looking at a group of trembling Assylian children huddled under his wing. Their translucent forms shimmered, tears streaking their glowing skin. "You're safe now," he said softly, though his voice carried authority. "We don't leave anyone behind. Not ever." Meanwhile, the orbital battle raged. Smaller Trithax cruisers were being torn apart by precise human strikes, and larger vessels staggered under the relentless assault. Explosions rocked the void as the Iron Resolve fired volleys that tore through enemy shields. The humans fought with the ferocity of predators, moving with coordination and instinct that no Trithax could predict. The Assylians watched from the ruins, awe and hope mixing in their eyes. They had never seen warriors like this, beings who faced impossible odds and refused to falter, who turned fear into strength, and whose every action screamed protection rather than conquest. For the first time in months, they dared to believe that their world could survive. Kor's mind was focused, calculating every move. "Strike fast. Strike hard. Protect the helpless. Crush the invaders," she murmured. Her crew followed without question, trusting her judgment, her experience, and the raw human will that burned in every soldier, pilot, and engineer aboard. The tide of battle began to shift. The Trithax lines wavered, their formations breaking under relentless human attacks. Smaller vessels, once confident and dominating, now scrambled in confusion. The humans adapted to every maneuver, anticipating strikes and countering with devastating precision. Their determination was absolute, their resolve unbreakable. Sergeant Ryn's squad encountered a Trithax patrol near the central dome. Alien warriors charged with jagged blades and energy rifles, confident in their strength. But the humans did not hesitate. They fired, dodged, and struck back with ruthless accuracy. Each move was lethal. Each strike was calculated. And for every Trithax that fell, the humans pressed forward, protecting the Assylians and reclaiming territory inch by inch. Commander Kor watched from orbit, her eyes unwavering. The battle was far from over, but the Trithax had learned something critical. Humans were not prey. Humans were hunters. Every vessel destroyed, every life saved. Every strategy executed flawlessly sent the same message across the void. The galaxy could no longer underestimate the Deathworlders. And for the Assylians, hope began to bloom amid the smoke and ruin. The humans were not only fighting, they were showing the galaxy a truth no one could deny. Humans survived the impossible, humans protected the weak, and humans punished the cruel without hesitation. By the end of the day, the Trithax had lost multiple cruisers and suffered severe damage to their flagship. Smaller vessels retreated, broken and shaken. The human fleet, though battered and scarred, remained strong and unbroken. On the surface, human marines had saved countless Assylian lives, proving that even the most fragile could survive with Deathworlders by their side. Kor stood on the bridge, staring at Valora below, the smoke still rising but the city slowly stabilizing. Her voice was calm, almost quiet. "They thought they could destroy us. They thought they could prey on the helpless. They were wrong. And they will remember that." Somewhere in the void, the Trithax trembled, not just at the loss of ships, but at a realization. Humans were not like other species. They adapted, they survived, they protected, and they struck with terrifying efficiency. They were not just fighters, they were predators forged in worlds that should have killed them. And now Valora would not fall. The flames of retribution had begun, and the galaxy would hear their roar. The first sparks of hope had begun to flare among the Assylians. From the shattered streets and ruined floating cities, their eyes watched humans with growing wonder. The Iron Resolve and its fleet of human ships had turned Valora's orbit into a deadly web, striking Trithax vessels with a precision that made even seasoned alien commanders falter. Every maneuver, every calculated attack seemed impossible, and yet it worked. On the ground, human marines moved like ghosts through the ruined jungles and toxic rivers. Sergeant Rin's squad led another group of Assylians out of a collapsing dome, carrying children and the elderly across broken streets. Acid rain hissed as it struck the ground, sending up clouds of steam. Jagged debris threatened to crush them at every step, but humans had walked through worse. They adapted, they survived, and in every action they showed the Assylians a truth they had long forgotten. They were not alone. Keep moving. Rin shouted over the roar of collapsing buildings. Every step counts. Every life counts. Don't stop. Above them, the Trithax scrambled to regroup. Their fleet, once organized and terrifying, was now in chaos. Small cruisers collided, weapons misfired, and panic rippled through the alien ranks. They had expected prey, not hunters. They had expected fear, not relentless courage. And every strike from the humans shattered their confidence further. In orbit, Commander Elise Kor watched the Trithax formations crumble. Her fingers hovered over the control panel, directing fire with careful precision. "Focus on the flagship," she ordered. "Disrupt their command. Break their lines. Every vessel that falls makes the next attack easier." Human fighters darted through the void, weaving between Trithax energy beams and debris fields with impossible agility. Their attacks came from angles the aliens could not anticipate, hitting weak points that human engineers had calculated in real time. Even damaged ships turned into weapons, ramming enemy vessels to buy time for survivors or delivering explosive charges that tore through the enemy's armor. Lieutenant Marin Zhao, at Kor's side, whispered in awe. "They've never seen humans fight like this. Even the legends, every story about the Deathworlders cannot describe this." Kor's eyes did not leave the battlefield. "Then let them learn today. Let them see the truth." On Valora's surface, the Assylians began to rise from the shadows. Encouraged by the humans, some joined with crude weapons, distracting Trithax patrols and creating openings for rescue squads. Their trembling forms, once filled only with fear, now moved with determination inspired by the courage around them. Every human action seemed to whisper, "You can survive. You are not alone. Fight if you can." The Trithax flagship Bloodmaw unleashed another barrage, hoping to crush the humans' offensive. Plasma beams carved swaths of destruction through the void. Entire squadrons vanished in explosions of fire and debris. Yet the humans adapted instantly. Damaged ships rerouted power to shields, fighters twisted through gaps in the enemy's fire, and orbital artillery from Valora struck with pinpoint accuracy. For every Trithax strike, humans responded with 10. Kor allowed herself a small, grim smile. They thought they were predators. They thought they were unstoppable. They were wrong. The tide was turning. The humans' relentless strategy, their unbreakable spirit, and their unparalleled adaptability forced the Trithax into retreat. Smaller cruisers fled the orbit, scrambling through the debris as explosions lit up the darkness. The flagship staggered, shields flickering as human firepower hammered at its weak points. Panic spread like wildfire among the alien ranks. Sergeant Rin's squad had reached the central dome, a place where hundreds of Assylians had been trapped. Alien patrols tried to intercept them, but humans had become unstoppable. Each encounter was a brutal, precise display of skill and survival instinct. The squad moved with a terrifying efficiency, striking enemies with both guns and hand-to-hand combat, using the environment to their advantage. Every Assylian rescued was another life saved, another testament to the humans' relentless courage. The Assylians, once fragile and trembling, began to cheer. Their hope, long buried under fear, returned in bursts of joy and tears. For the first time, they dared to dream that Valora could survive, that they could survive. In orbit, Kor's communications officer reported, "Commander, the Trithax formations are breaking. Their coordination is collapsing. Smaller ships are retreating. Good, Kor said firmly. We will not give them time to regroup. Push forward. Protect the Assylians. Strike them until they understand what it means to threaten the helpless. Across Velora, explosions erupted, fires spread, and the Trithax were driven back. The humans, battered but unbroken, pressed their advantage. Every move was calculated, every strike deliberate, every rescue mission executed with unshakable resolve. The planet itself seemed to respond, as if recognizing the willpower of those who refused to let it fall. The Assylians looked up at the human ships streaking across the sky, their eyes wide with awe and gratitude. They came from the stars, one whispered, and they fight like the gods themselves. Kor stood on the bridge, her gaze sweeping over the battlefield. They will remember today, she said softly, not just as the day Velora survived, but as the day they learned that humans do not bow, do not flee, and do not abandon the helpless. That lesson will echo across the stars. The Trithax faltered, their confidence shattered. The humans had proven that courage, survival, and heart were more powerful than brute strength. The tide had turned. Velora, once a world on the brink of annihilation, now held onto life and hope. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the galaxy began to whisper the truth of the Deathworlders. Humans were not prey. They were the hunters who emerged from impossible worlds to protect the helpless. The Trithax thought they had seen all that the galaxy's species could offer. They had crushed empires, hunted entire civilizations, and ruled star systems through terror. But they had never faced humans like these. Deathworlders, forged in the harshest corners of existence, molded by worlds designed to kill. And now, more were arriving. From sectors previously uncharted by galactic maps, massive human dreadnoughts emerged from the dark. Their black hulls shimmered with reinforced alloys, and their weapons bristled like the claws of some cosmic predator. These were not ordinary humans. These were the ones who had survived acid storms on mercurial moons, crushing gravity on distant planets, and radioactive wastelands that could have ended ordinary life instantly. They were the embodiment of humanity's unbreakable will, a force that the Trithax had not anticipated. Commander Elise Kor observed the incoming reinforcements from the bridge of the Iron Resolve. Her eyes gleamed with both pride and grim satisfaction. They think they can fight us with fear, she said, her voice steady and commanding. They are about to learn what fear really looks like. The fleet surged forward, joining the humans already in orbit above Velora. Fighters darted between ships like lightning, their lasers cutting swaths through the enemy lines. Dreadnoughts fired volleys of missiles and plasma charges that tore through Trithax armor, ripping open gaping holes in cruisers that had once seemed invincible. Every strike was calculated, precise, and merciless. The Trithax scrambled to respond. Their flagship, Bloodmaw, roared with energy cannons trying to target the approaching human reinforcements. Yet for every human ship destroyed, 10 more seemed to take its place, pressing forward with relentless fury. Their tactics were chaotic to the Trithax, yet flawlessly coordinated among themselves. Every pilot, every gunner, every engineer seemed to anticipate the enemy's next move before it happened. On the surface, human marines felt the shift in the battle. With the arrival of the Deathworlder dreadnoughts, the Trithax ground forces began to falter. Alien patrols retreated under fire from orbital artillery, and marines striking from unexpected angles. Sergeant Rin led his squad through collapsing streets, rescuing more Assylians and guiding them to safety. "We've got backup," he yelled over the roar of collapsing buildings. "Keep moving. We're not letting anyone fall." The Assylians, once trembling in fear, now moved with cautious courage. Guided by the humans, they helped with the logistics, signaling safe routes and even manning some defensive positions. Every human life saved was a spark of hope that spread across the ruined cityscape. The Trithax were in disbelief. Every new dreadnought, every squad of elite humans pushed them further into chaos. Their formations collapsed, their ships scattered, and their warriors screamed in frustration. They had ruled the stars with brute force, but humans were not like any prey they had known. Humans adapted, survived, and fought back with a ferocity that was almost unnatural. Kor's voice rang over the fleet. "Strike now. Leave nothing standing that threatens the helpless. Let them understand what it means to challenge humanity." Massive explosions rocked the Trithax fleet. Smaller cruisers disintegrated under coordinated attacks. The flagship staggered, its shields flickering as human dreadnoughts fired concentrated volleys directly at its core. Pilots performed maneuvers that seemed impossible, evading attacks that should have destroyed them in seconds. Each successful strike sent waves of awe and fear through the Assylian survivors, who watched the sky light up with fire and destruction. In the midst of battle, Lieutenant Marin Zhao whispered to Kor, "They never expected this. Even their legends didn't prepare them for humans like this." Kor nodded, her eyes unwavering. "They've seen humanity's strength in small battles, but now they will see what happens when the full force emerges. Deathworlders are not just survivors, they are the reckoning." On the ground, the humans pressed their advantage. They moved through collapsed streets, toxic rivers, and ruined towers, fighting Trithax patrols with brutal efficiency. Every squad had been trained for impossible worlds, and now that training was being unleashed with devastating effect. Acid rains, collapsing structures, and enemy fire did not stop them. They used it. Every danger became a weapon, every hazard a tool, every obstacle an opportunity. Sergeant Rin paused to watch an Assylian child cling to a fallen comrade. He knelt down, speaking softly but firmly. "You are safe now. You're alive because humans don't abandon the helpless. Remember that. Carry it with you." The child nodded, tears shining in their translucent eyes, hope rekindling where fear had once ruled. The Trithax flagship attempted one final barrage, a desperate act of desperation. Plasma beams tore through space, striking multiple human ships. Explosions erupted, debris scattered, and yet the Deathworlders pressed forward. They were a storm of black hulls, fire, and unstoppable determination. Every strike crushed morale. Every human action signaled one undeniable truth. The galaxy had underestimated humans, and that was a mistake that would cost the Trithax everything. The tide of battle had irrevocably turned. The humans, united with the reinforcements of the Deathworlders, pressed relentlessly, showing no mercy to those who had preyed upon the weak. The Assylians, once terrified and broken, began to believe in survival again. The humans had become more than warriors. They were symbols of hope, courage, and unstoppable justice. Kor looked out at the battlefield, her face resolute. "The galaxy will remember today," she whispered. "They will remember what it means to face humanity. They will remember that Deathworlders do not bow, do not run, and do not fail. We are here, and we are unstoppable." The Trithax faltered, the fleet in chaos, the flagship wounded and disoriented. Somewhere in the darkness of space, the whispers of the galaxy began anew. Humans were not merely survivors. They were Deathworlders, emerging from the dark to protect the helpless and strike down the cruel. And Valora, once on the brink of annihilation, would survive. The humans had become the reckoning, and nothing could stop them. The Trithax were broken. Their fleet, once terrifying in its precision and power, was now scattered, wounded, and desperate. Panic rippled through their ranks as human dreadnoughts and fighters pressed their advantage. The galaxy had never seen a species fight like this. Deathworlders, humans forged in impossible worlds, striking with precision, ruthlessness, and unshakable determination. Commander Elise Kor stood on the bridge of the Iron Resolve, eyes fixed on the crippled flagship, Bloodmaw. Its jagged hull was scarred from relentless bombardment, its shields flickering under repeated volleys of plasma and missiles. Around it, smaller Trithax vessels either surrendered or fled, their morale shattered. Yet Kor knew the flagship's destruction would be the final blow, the point where the Trithax would truly understand that humans did not negotiate with predators. "Humans executed justice. Target the flagship directly," Kor commanded. "Focus every ship, every fighter, every weapon. Break their command. Show them the cost of cruelty." The human fleet surged forward. Fighters weaved through broken Trithax cruisers, striking weak points that no alien engineer could have anticipated. Torpedoes streaked through the void, ripping open armor and detonating with brilliant fire. Orbital artillery from Valora targeted every escape route, ensuring the Trithax could not flee. Humans had turned the battlefield into a web from which the predators could not escape. Below, human Marines pressed the advantage on the surface. Sergeant Rin's squad moved through shattered streets and collapsed towers, securing safe zones for Assylian survivors. Every rescued civilian was a victory, every strike against the Trithax a lesson. Rin glanced at the terrified but hopeful Assylian children huddled behind him. "We're here. You're safe. You'll live. Remember that," he said softly, his voice carrying both authority and comfort. The Trithax commanders realized the futility of their position. They had once ruled through fear. They had crushed civilizations that dared oppose them. But humans were different. Humans did not fear death, they used it as fuel. Humans did not flee, they advanced relentlessly. And every human life lost inspired 10 more acts of vengeance. In orbit, the humans unleashed a coordinated strike. Deathworlder dreadnoughts fired concentrated plasma volleys directly at the blood maw. Fighter swarms struck from every angle, distracting its weapons and targeting exposed energy cores. Every maneuver was executed with deadly precision. The Trithax flagship roared in fury, trying to bring down as many attackers as possible. But the humans were everywhere, unrelenting. Lieutenant Marin Zhao, standing beside Kor on the bridge, whispered in awe, "They've never faced anything like this. Even their legends. They didn't prepare them for humans." Kor's eyes did not leave the battlefield. "Good, let them learn today. Let them see what happens when prey refuses to bow, refuses to run, refuses to die quietly. Today, the galaxy sees humans as we truly are. Deathworlders." The flagship shuddered as torpedoes struck its main hull, tearing massive holes and exposing its interior to the void. Fires erupted across its decks. Alien crews screamed in panic as corridors collapsed and weapon systems failed. One by one, smaller ships around it were destroyed or surrendered. The Trithax had become prey in a hunt they could not comprehend. On Valora, human marines pushed through the final pockets of resistance. Toxic fogs and acid rain did not stop them. Collapsing buildings were used as cover, and the humans moved with a terrifying grace through the chaos. Every Asilian life saved was another spark of hope. Children clung to their rescuers, tears streaming down translucent cheeks, and for the first time in months they smiled. Sergeant Rin's voice rang out, "Keep moving. Don't let fear stop you. You're alive because humans fight for the helpless. Carry that with you." Back in orbit, the final strike was prepared. Kor's hand hovered over the command panel as she issued the last order. "All firepower. Focus on the core. End this." The human fleet unleashed a storm of missiles, plasma, and laser fire. The blood maw shuddered violently as concentrated strikes tore through its energy cores. Explosions ripped through the ship, sending debris into the void and shaking the surrounding Trithax vessels. The flagship roared one final time, a scream of fury and disbelief before shattering into fragments that drifted silently through space. A cheer erupted across the human fleet, a sound of victory, relief, and unbroken spirit. The Trithax survivors fled in terror, their fleet broken beyond repair, their confidence shattered. The galaxy had witnessed the impossible. Humans had defeated an empire of predators, protected the helpless, and emerged stronger, unbroken, and undefeated. Kor's voice came over communications to the surviving Asilians. "The Trithax are gone. Your world is safe. You can live again. Remember today, not as the day you were saved, but as the day you learned that humanity does not bow to fear. Humanity protects, humanity survives, and humanity strikes with unstoppable force." On Violora, Asilians emerged from hiding, trembling but alive. They stared at the stars, at the ships that had brought them salvation. Children ran to human marines, hugging their rescuers, their joy shining through the darkness. Elders whispered thanks, tears streaming down faces that had known only despair. Kor stood on the bridge, staring at the scattered Trithax wreckage. "They thought they were the hunters," she said quietly. "They were wrong. Humans are not prey. We are the hunters, and the galaxy will remember." Somewhere in the void, the surviving Trithax whispered in fear and disbelief. They had ruled through terror, but humans had destroyed that terror in hours. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. Deathworlders did not run. Deathworlders did not beg. Deathworlders struck back, and they struck without mercy. Valora had survived. The Asilians would rebuild, and the humans, scarred, battered, but unbroken, had proven their place in the galaxy. The final battle was over. The humans had won, but the legend of the Deathworlders, of humanity's relentless courage and unyielding strength, had only just begun. The void was silent now. The Trithax fleet had been shattered, their flagship destroyed, and their remaining vessels scattered into the darkness. Valora, once on the brink of annihilation, lay in ruins but alive. The smoke still rose from shattered cities. Rivers still flowed with molten debris, and the air was thick with the tang of destruction. Yet amidst the ruin, a spark of hope burned brighter than any star. Commander Elise Corps stood on the bridge of the Iron Resolve, watching as human and Assylian teams worked together to stabilize the planet. The humans were everywhere, repairing power grids, clearing rubble, and providing medical aid. They moved with efficiency and purpose, their presence a promise that no one would be left behind. For every building that fell, humans worked to save lives. For every danger, they had a plan. For every fear, they offered courage. The Assylians, still trembling but growing in strength, looked on in awe. Once fragile and paralyzed by fear, they now moved with purpose, guided by the humans who had saved them. Children ran through the streets, laughter mingling with the distant rumble of collapsed towers being cleared. Adults worked alongside human engineers, learning, adapting, and discovering a resilience they had never known existed. Sergeant Rin walked through the ruins, checking on survivors. A young Assylian girl clung to his hand, her translucent skin glowing faintly in the dim light. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice quivering. "You saved us." Rin knelt, smiling beneath the grime and soot of battle. "You saved yourselves," he said gently. "We just made sure no one stopped you. Remember that. That courage lives inside you now." In orbit, Commander Corps watched as the remaining human fleet patrolled the skies, ensuring no Trithax forces could return. Fighters darted through debris fields, scanning for survivors and remnants of the enemy. The humans had proven themselves not only as warriors but as guardians. The galaxy had underestimated them for centuries, and now, the legend of the Deathworlders would spread faster than any rumor. More enduring than any warning, Marin Zhao stood beside Corps, her voice soft but firm. "They'll never forget today. Not Valora, not the Trithax, not any of them. Humanity. We're a force they cannot ignore." Corps nodded. "We weren't here to conquer. We weren't here to rule. We were here to protect, to survive, and to show that the helpless are not meant to be prey. That's the truth of humanity. That's what makes us Deathworlders." On the ground, the Assylians began to rebuild. Ruined structures were cleared and repaired with human assistance. Families reunited, their fear slowly replaced by hope. Elders whispered prayers of gratitude to the stars. And young Assylians learned that survival was possible, that courage could grow even in the darkest places. Humans had not only fought for them, they had inspired them. Sergeant Rin paused to look at a newly constructed shelter, where children laughed and played despite the ruined city around them. "This is why we fight," he said softly, more to himself than anyone else. "Not for glory, not for fame, but for moments like this. To see life survive, to see hope live." Meanwhile, Commander Corps convened a council with the Assylian leaders. Her tone was firm but kind. "Your world will recover," she said. "The Trithax will not return, not while humanity stands. You have the chance to rebuild stronger than before. Learn from this. Grow from this. And remember that the galaxy is not always fair, but neither are we." The Assylians listened, awe and gratitude mingling in their expressions. For generations they had lived under the threat of predators they could not fight, and now they had witnessed a species that refused to bow, that refused to run, that faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. Humanity had shown them a new way to survive, a lesson that would echo through generations. Corps looked out across the planet, her gaze steady and unwavering. Valora was battered, scarred, and broken, but alive. And in that survival there was beauty. Life had endured. Courage had endured. Humanity had endured. As the sun rose over the horizon, casting golden light across the violet skies, the Assylians gathered in the cleared plazas, looking up at the human fleet orbiting above. Commander Corps' voice came over the comms, calm and resolute. "We came to protect. We came to survive. And together we showed the galaxy what it means to fight for the helpless. Today Valora survives. Tomorrow, anything is possible." The children cheered. The adults wept. The elders bowed in respect. And somewhere in the quiet void, the shattered remnants of the Trithax fleet drifted in silence, knowing that they had underestimated a species they could never defeat. Corps turned to her crew. "We've done more than win a battle," she said. "We've changed a world. We've saved a species. And we've reminded the galaxy that humans are not prey. We are survivors, warriors, and protectors. We are Deathworlders. Never forget it." The humans had arrived from impossible worlds, unbroken and unyielding. They had faced the galaxy's most feared predators and emerged victorious. The Assylians had survived, and the story of humanity's courage, determination, and relentless will would echo across the stars. Valora's skies were still scarred, and the ruins remained, but a new dawn had begun. Life would rebuild. Hope would flourish. And the legend of the Deathworlders, the humans who emerged from the dark to protect the helpless, would inspire fear in the cruel and courage in the weak for generations to come. Commander Kor stood at the observation deck, watching the first rays of Valora's sun touch the ruined towers and forests below. A faint smile crossed her face. Humanity had come, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The battle was over. The planet lived, and the humans, the Deathworlders, had left a legacy that would endure forever.